The steady beeping of my heart monitor had become my lifeline during 3 weeks of recovery when I watched my husband David disconnected in the middle of the night, his silhouette barely visible in the dim hospital lighting. What he didn't know was that I had been documenting his increasingly suspicious behavior for days, and by morning, the attempted murder charges would be as clear as the security footage that captured every deliberate movement of his hands as he systematically removed the equipment keeping me alive. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The antiseptic smell of Riverside General Hospital had become as familiar as my own perfume during those first weeks of October. Room 314 in the cardiac wing had transformed from a temporary recovery space into what felt like a prison cell, though I hadn't yet understood who my captor truly was. The view from my window overlooked the hospital's meditation garden, where autumn leaves drifted down like scattered prayers, a peaceful contrast to the mechanical symphony of medical equipment that surrounded my bed. 3 weeks earlier, what should have been routine heart surgery had become complicated when my body rejected the initial valve replacement. Dr. Robert Hayes, a cardiovascular surgeon with 20 years of experience and hands steadier than a Swiss watchmaker, had explained the situation with the gentle precision of someone who delivered difficult news regularly. The second surgery had been successful, but my recovery required careful monitoring and a complex array of medical equipment that had turned my hospital room into something resembling a spacecraft control center. David had been the perfect husband during those first days, arriving each morning with fresh flowers and staying until visiting hours ended. His insurance agency on Oak Street was apparently running smoothly without his constant presence, thanks to his capable staff and the solid client relationships he had built over 12 years in business. He brought me updates about our home in Maple Heights, assuring me that everything was being maintained in my absence, that our neighbors were watching the house, and that he was managing all the household responsibilities with characteristic efficiency. The heart rate monitor beside my bed displayed numbers that Dr. Hayes reviewed during his morning rounds, nodding with satisfaction as my cardiovascular system gradually strengthened. The oxygen concentrator hummed quietly in the corner, delivering the precise mixture my healing heart required. Most critical was the medication dispenser, programmed to deliver carefully timed doses of blood thinners and cardiac medications that prevented complications during this delicate recovery period. Emily Chen, my night shift nurse, had become more than a medical professional during my extended stay. A recent graduate from the nursing program at Riverside University, she possessed an intuitive understanding of patient care that her more experienced colleagues often admired. Her attention to detail extended beyond medical protocols to the subtle emotional needs of patients facing extended recovery periods. She had noticed things about my situation that others might have overlooked, observations that would prove crucial in the days ahead. My siblings Kevin and Amanda visited regularly, their concern evident in the way they hovered near my bedside, asking detailed questions about my treatment and recovery timeline. As twins, they had always shared an unspoken communication, finishing each other's sentences and sensing when something was amiss. Their careers in environmental law had taught them to pay attention to details others might miss, to look for patterns and inconsistencies that revealed deeper truths. Margaret Mitchell, David's mother, had surprised me with her frequent visits during my hospitalization. Our relationship had always been cordial rather than warm, the polite interaction between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law who respected each other without achieving genuine closeness. She had raised David as a single mother after his father's death when David was 12, building a successful real estate career while managing the challenges of single parenthood. Her visits brought homemade soup and gentle conversation, creating an atmosphere of family support that I appreciated during the vulnerability of recovery. The private dining room at the Grandview restaurant held memories of celebrations from our 8-year marriage. David had proposed to me there on a snowy December evening, the candlelight reflecting off the engagement ring he had selected with such care. We had returned for anniversaries and promotions, building a collection of happy memories around the mahogany table with its view of the city's historic district. The restaurant's elegant atmosphere and discretionary service had made it our venue for important conversations, a place where we could discuss the future with privacy and grace. Dr. Hayes had been cautiously optimistic about my progress during his evening rounds that Tuesday, noting that my vital signs had stabilized sufficiently to begin considering discharge planning. The medication regimen would need to continue at home, along with portable monitoring equipment that would allow me to maintain the necessary medical supervision while resuming a modified version of my normal routine. Physical therapy would begin the following week, gradually rebuilding the strength that 3 weeks of bed rest had diminished. The insurance implications of my extended hospitalization had been substantial, though David assured me repeatedly that our coverage was adequate and that financial concerns should not interfere with my focus on recovery. His expertise in the insurance industry meant he understood the complexities of medical coverage better than most, and he had handled all the paperwork and communications with our providers. This assistance had been a relief during a time when my energy needed to be conserved for healing rather than administrative details. Lisa Thompson worked as a marketing coordinator at the advertising firm 2 blocks from David's insurance office. I had met her briefly at a Chamber of Commerce networking event 6 months earlier, remembering her as an energetic woman with auburn hair and an easy laugh. David had mentioned her occasionally in passing, referring to professional collaborations on marketing materials for his agency. These references had seemed entirely innocent, the normal business interactions that characterized David's expanding professional network.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
In Riverside's close-knit business community. The medical equipment surrounding my bed represented thousands of dollars in sophisticated technology, each device programmed specifically for my condition and recovery requirements. The heart monitor tracked not only my pulse but the electrical patterns of my healing heart, alerting the nursing staff to any irregularities that might indicate complications. The oxygen concentrator had been calibrated to deliver precisely the concentration my cardiovascular system required, neither too little to support healing, nor too much to create other medical complications. My medication schedule had been developed through careful consultation between Dr. Hayes and the hospital's pharmacy staff, taking into account not only my primary cardiac needs, but also my allergies and interactions with other medications. The automated dispenser eliminated human error in timing and dosage, critical factors when dealing with blood thinners that required precise administration to prevent both clotting and hemorrhaging complications. Emily's training had emphasized the importance of patient advocacy, recognizing when family dynamics might complicate medical care and knowing how to document concerns appropriately. Her observations about visitor behavior and patient responses had been sharpened by coursework in psychology and her natural intuition about human behavior. These skills had served her well in developing trust with patients who might be reluctant to voice concerns about their personal situations. The hospital's security system included cameras in all hallways and common areas, a precaution implemented after several incidents involving theft and unauthorized access to patient rooms. The footage was routinely archived for 30 days before being deleted, providing a window of documentation for any incidents that might require investigation. Access to patient rooms was monitored through keycard systems that tracked when staff members entered and exited, creating detailed logs of all activity in sensitive areas. Kevin's environmental law practice had given him experience with cases involving corporate negligence and cover-ups, teaching him to recognize patterns of deception and to understand how seemingly innocent actions might be part of larger schemes. His analytical mind automatically cataloged inconsistencies and unusual behavior, skills that had served him well in uncovering environmental violations by companies attempting to hide their activities from regulatory authorities. Amanda's specialization in family law had exposed her to the darker aspects of human relationships, including cases involving domestic violence and financial abuse. Her training had taught her to recognize warning signs that others might dismiss as ordinary marital stress, and to understand how power dynamics within relationships could create vulnerability for individuals facing medical crises or other life challenges. The cardiac wing of Riverside General maintained quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., when only essential medical activities were permitted in patient rooms. During these hours, the hallways were dimly lit and staffed with skeleton crews of nurses who divided their attention among multiple patients. Security rounds occurred hourly, but the guards focused primarily on external threats rather than monitoring family members who had legitimate access to patient rooms. David's insurance agency had grown substantially during our marriage, expanding from a small operation with 3 employees to a regional firm with 12 staff members and satellite offices in 2 neighboring towns. The success had provided us with financial security and the comfortable lifestyle we enjoyed in our Maple Heights home. David's business acumen and relationship-building skills had earned him recognition within the local business community and membership in several professional organizations. The medication dispenser attached to my bedside represented a critical element of my recovery protocol, programmed to deliver specific medications at precise intervals throughout each 24-hour period. Blood thinners required particular precision, as missing doses could lead to dangerous clotting while excessive doses could cause life-threatening hemorrhaging. The timing of other cardiac medications was equally important, supporting my heart's healing process through carefully coordinated pharmaceutical intervention. My phone had been my primary connection to the outside world during the long hospital days, allowing me to maintain contact with friends and colleagues while following my recovery from the comfort of my hospital bed. The device had also become an unconscious repository of evidence, recording conversations and capturing details that would later prove significant in ways I couldn't have anticipated during those vulnerable weeks of healing. Margaret's real estate expertise had given her insight into property values and financial planning, knowledge she had shared with David as he built his insurance business and planned for our family's future. Her practical wisdom about money management and investment strategies had influenced David's approach to business development and personal financial planning, creating what appeared to be a solid foundation for our long-term security. The Grandview's private dining room could accommodate up to 12 guests around its central mahogany table, with additional seating available near the fireplace for more casual conversations. The restaurant's reputation for discretion had made it popular among local business leaders and professionals who needed neutral territory for sensitive discussions. The staff had been trained to provide attentive service while maintaining appropriate distance, ensuring privacy for guests who valued confidentiality. Dr. Hayes had built his practice on the principle that patient education was as important as surgical skill, spending considerable time explaining procedures and recovery expectations to both patients and their families. His willingness to answer questions and address concerns had earned him loyalty from patients who appreciated his thorough approach to medical care. This communication style had been particularly valuable during my complex recovery, providing reassurance during the uncertainty of extended hospitalization. The hospital's patient advocacy program included resources for individuals who might be facing complicated family situations during medical crises. Social workers and patient advocates were available to help navigate not only medical decisions but also the practical and emotional challenges that could arise when illness created vulnerability within family relationships. These resources remained available even when patients didn't initially recognize their need for such support. Emily's night shift responsibilities included monitoring multiple patients across the cardiac wing, but her training had emphasized the importance of recognizing when individual situations required additional attention. Her documentation skills and attention to detail had been praised by supervisors who valued her ability to notice subtle changes in patient condition or behavior that might indicate developing complications or concerns. As October progressed toward November, the city of Riverside settled into its autumn rhythm, with shorter days and cooler temperatures signaling the approaching winter season. The hospital's heating system worked efficiently to maintain comfortable temperatures throughout the building, though the constant circulation of air through modern ventilation systems created a subtle background hum that blended with the sounds of medical equipment throughout the cardiac wing. The complexity of my recovery had required coordination among multiple medical specialists, each contributing expertise in their particular area, while Dr. Hayes maintained overall responsibility for my care. This collaborative approach ensured that every aspect of my healing process received appropriate attention, from cardiovascular recovery to nutritional support to physical therapy planning, that would begin once my condition stabilized sufficiently. The morning routine at Riverside General began each day at 6 a.m., with the changing of shifts, a carefully orchestrated transition that ensured continuity of care while bringing fresh energy to the demanding work of patient monitoring. Emily would arrive 15 minutes early to review overnight notes and speak with the departing day nurse, gathering the small details that made the difference between adequate care and exceptional attention to patient needs. Her dedication to this transition process had earned recognition from supervisors who valued her commitment to comprehensive patient advocacy. My room on the third floor faced east, filling with natural light each morning as the sun rose over the residential neighborhoods that surrounded the hospital complex. The view included the top floors of downtown office buildings where David worked, a reminder of the normal life that waited beyond these medical walls. During those early weeks of recovery, I had spent countless hours watching the patterns of traffic and pedestrian movement that marked the rhythm of a healthy community, looking forward to the day when I could rejoin that flow of ordinary activity. The Mitchell family home in Maple Heights represented 12 years of careful planning and gradual improvement since David and I had purchased it as newlyweds. The colonial-style house featured 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen that had been renovated 3 years earlier, and a back garden where I had cultivated flower beds that bloomed in succession throughout the growing season. David had installed a home security system 2 years ago, citing concerns about break-ins in our neighborhood, though crime statistics suggested Maple Heights remained one of the safer residential areas in Riverside. David's insurance agency occupied the ground floor of a converted Victorian mansion on Oak Street, sharing the building with an accounting firm and a small law practice that handled residential real estate transactions. The location provided convenient parking and easy access for clients, while the historic character of the building projected the stability and trustworthiness that David considered essential for his business image. His office featured oak furniture and leather chairs that created an atmosphere of professional competence and financial security. The cardiac wing where I resided during my recovery had been completed 5 years earlier as part of a major expansion project funded through community donations and federal grants. The design incorporated the latest advances in patient monitoring technology while maintaining a residential atmosphere that reduced the institutional feeling common in older hospital facilities. Each room included space for family members to remain overnight when necessary, recognizing the important role that emotional support played in medical recovery. Dr. Hayes had joined the medical staff at Riverside General after completing his residency at a prestigious teaching hospital in Seattle. Drawn by the opportunity to build a practice in a community where long-term patient relationships were valued over the volume-driven approach of larger metropolitan medical centers. His philosophy emphasized collaborative decision-making with patients and their families, ensuring that treatment plans reflected not only medical best practices but also individual circumstances and preferences that affected recovery outcomes. The medication regimen supporting my recovery included 6 different prescriptions administered at varying intervals throughout each 24-hour period. Blood thinners required precise timing to maintain therapeutic levels without creating bleeding risks, while cardiac medications supported my heart's healing process through carefully calibrated doses that would be adjusted based on daily monitoring results. Pain management medications had been gradually reduced as my surgical sites healed, though breakthrough pain still required attention during physical therapy sessions. Emily's background included not only her nursing degree but also undergraduate coursework in psychology and communications, preparation that had proved valuable in recognizing when patients might be experiencing stress or anxiety that could affect their recovery process. Her ability to create comfortable environments for difficult conversations had been recognized by colleagues who often sought her assistance with challenging family dynamics or patient advocacy situations that required diplomatic intervention. The hospital's electronic medical records system maintained comprehensive documentation of every aspect of patient care, from medication administration to vital sign monitoring to visitor logs that tracked when family members accessed patient rooms. This digital infrastructure supported both quality control and legal protection, ensuring that every decision and intervention could be reviewed and verified through permanent documentation that met regulatory requirements and professional standards. Kevin's law firm specialized in environmental compliance issues for corporations operating in the Pacific Northwest. Work that had taught him to recognize patterns of deception and to trace complex webs of evidence that might not be immediately apparent to investigators without specialized training. His analytical skills had been honed through cases involving corporate cover-ups, where seemingly innocent actions masked deliberate efforts to avoid regulatory oversight or legal responsibility for environmental damage. Amanda's family law practice included a subspecialty in domestic relations cases involving financial abuse and coercive control, areas where her training had revealed how intimate partner violence often manifested through economic manipulation and emotional dominance rather than physical aggression. Her experience had taught her to recognize warning signs that might be invisible to others, particularly situations where medical crises created opportunities for controlling behavior to escalate. Margaret's real estate career had spanned 35 years in Riverside, during which she had built a reputation for integrity and thoroughness that had earned her recognition as one of the community's most trusted professionals. Her success had been built on attention to detail and genuine concern for her clients' long-term welfare, qualities she had instilled in David during his childhood and that had influenced his approach to building his insurance business. The Grandview restaurant had served Riverside's business and social community for over 40 years, earning a reputation for excellent cuisine and discretionary service that made it the preferred venue for important personal and professional occasions. The establishment's private dining rooms provided appropriate settings for sensitive conversations, while the main dining area offered a sophisticated atmosphere for everyday meals and casual business meetings that required quiet surroundings and attentive service. Lisa Thompson's marketing career had begun at a small advertising agency in Portland before she moved to Riverside 18 months earlier to join the team at Creative Solutions, a growing firm that specialized in developing promotional materials for professional service businesses. Her portfolio included successful campaigns for medical practices, law firms, and financial service companies throughout the region, work that had brought her into contact with business leaders across multiple industries. The medical equipment surrounding my hospital bed represented the intersection of advanced technology and practical patient care, with each device serving specific functions that supported different aspects of my recovery process. The heart monitor tracked not only basic pulse rate but also the electrical activity of my healing heart muscle, providing real-time data that allowed medical staff to identify potential complications before they became serious threats to my recovery. Riverside's business community had grown substantially during the past decade, with new companies attracted by the city's combination of educated workforce, reasonable cost of living, and proximity to major metropolitan markets. David's insurance agency had benefited from this growth, as expanding businesses required comprehensive coverage and risk management services that his firm was well positioned to provide through relationships with multiple insurance carriers and specialized expertise in commercial coverage. The oxygen concentrator in my room had been calibrated specifically for my recovery needs, delivering a precise mixture of gases that supported my cardiovascular system without creating the complications that could result from excessive oxygen levels. The device operated almost silently, its gentle hum becoming part of the background ambiance that characterized my hospital environment during the long days and nights of gradual healing. Physical therapy sessions were scheduled to begin once Dr. Hayes determined that my cardiovascular system had stabilized sufficiently to handle the controlled stress of structured exercise. The hospital's rehabilitation department had developed specialized protocols for cardiac patients that balanced the need for movement and strength building with the caution required during the delicate early stages of heart surgery recovery. Emily's documentation style had been praised by supervisors, who valued her ability to capture not only medical observations but also the subtle behavioral and emotional indicators that could signal patient distress or family dynamics that might affect recovery outcomes. Her notes provided comprehensive records that supported both immediate patient care decisions and longer-term treatment planning that extended beyond the hospital stay. The automated medication dispenser attached to my bed represented thousands of dollars in sophisticated pharmacy technology, programmed with my specific prescription requirements and connected to the hospital's central monitoring system that tracked medication compliance and identified potential adverse reactions or drug interactions. The device eliminated human error in timing and dosage while providing detailed records of every medication administered during my recovery. David's business success had been built on his ability to understand complex insurance products and explain them clearly to clients who needed comprehensive coverage but lacked technical expertise in risk management. His reputation for honesty and thoroughness had generated substantial referral business, creating a client base that valued long-term relationships over price competition with larger insurance companies that offered less personalized service. The hospital's visitor policies had been designed to balance patient needs for family support with medical requirements for rest and privacy during critical recovery periods. Family members could access patient rooms throughout most of the day, though quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. restricted visits, except in emergency situations or when specific medical circumstances required family presence for decision-making or emotional support. Margaret's involvement in David's business development had included introductions to potential clients within the real estate community, professionals who required specialized insurance coverage for their property transactions and business operations. Her endorsement had provided credibility that helped David establish relationships with influential business leaders, who became both clients and sources of referrals to other professionals needing insurance services. The cardiac rehabilitation program at Riverside General had achieved national recognition for its comprehensive approach to post-surgical recovery, combining medical monitoring with nutritional counseling and psychological support that addressed the emotional challenges often associated with heart surgery and extended recovery periods. The program's success rate in returning patients to full activity levels had attracted patients from throughout the region who sought the most advanced care available. Security cameras throughout the hospital complex had been installed following incidents at other medical facilities where unauthorized individuals had gained access to patient areas, creating potential risks for vulnerable individuals during medical crises. The surveillance system recorded continuously, with footage archived for 30 days before automatic deletion, providing a window of documentation for any incidents that might require investigation or legal review. The nursing staff rotation schedule ensured that each patient maintained consistency of care, while benefiting from the diverse expertise and perspectives that different nurses brought to patient advocacy and medical monitoring. Emily's night shift responsibilities included oversight of 8 patients, though her training emphasized the importance of recognizing when individual situations required additional attention or specialized intervention that might not be apparent through routine monitoring protocols. Dr. Hayes's surgical technique had been refined through hundreds of cardiac procedures, earning him recognition from colleagues who valued his combination of technical precision and compassionate patient care. His approach to post-surgical recovery emphasized patient education and family involvement, ensuring that recovery plans reflected not only medical requirements but also individual circumstances that could affect compliance with treatment protocols. The hospital's social work department maintained resources for patients and families facing complex situations that extended beyond immediate medical needs, including financial counseling, family mediation services, and connections to community resources that could provide ongoing support during extended recovery periods. These services remained available even when patients initially declined assistance, recognizing that needs might emerge or change as recovery progressed. My phone had become an essential tool for maintaining connections with the outside world during the isolation of extended hospitalization, allowing me to coordinate with colleagues who were handling my work responsibilities and to maintain friendships that provided emotional support during the vulnerability of serious illness. The device also served as my primary source of entertainment during the long hours between medical procedures and physical therapy sessions. The financial implications of extended hospitalization had been substantial, though David's expertise in insurance coverage had ensured that our policies provided adequate protection against the catastrophic costs that could result from complex medical situations. His management of insurance claims and coordination with medical billing departments had eliminated financial stress that might otherwise have complicated my focus on recovery and healing. Lisa's professional relationship with David had begun 6 months earlier when his insurance agency had contracted with Creative Solutions to develop new marketing materials that would support expansion into neighboring markets. Her creative approach and understanding of professional service marketing had produced promotional campaigns that generated measurable increases in client inquiries and policy sales for David's growing business. The hospital's patient advocacy program included trained volunteers who visited patients daily to provide emotional support and assistance with non-medical needs that could affect recovery outcomes. These advocates served as independent resources for patients who might need assistance navigating hospital systems or addressing concerns that fell outside the direct responsibilities of medical staff but nonetheless affected their overall experience and recovery progress. Part 3. Character Introduction and Dynamics. Emily Chen arrived for her night shift each evening at precisely 10 minutes before 11. Using those extra moments to review patient files and speak quietly with the departing evening nurse about any concerns or changes that had occurred during the day. Her approach to nursing emphasized continuity of care and attention to subtle details that might indicate developing complications or family dynamics that could affect patient recovery. These conversations often revealed information that wouldn't appear in official medical records but could be crucial for providing comprehensive patient advocacy. Detective Maria Rodriguez had spent 15 years with the Riverside Police Department, working her way up from patrol officer to detective through a combination of investigative instincts and meticulous attention to detail that had earned respect from colleagues and supervisors. Specialization in domestic violence cases had taught her to recognize patterns of controlling behavior and to understand how medical crises could create opportunities for abuse that might not be immediately apparent to healthcare professionals focused on medical rather than interpersonal concerns. Dr. Hayes maintained office hours at Riverside General 3 days each week, spending the remaining time at his private practice in a medical complex adjacent to the hospital campus. His patient load included both surgical cases and ongoing cardiac care for individuals with chronic conditions that required specialized monitoring and treatment. His reputation for thoroughness and patient advocacy had generated referrals from throughout the region, creating a practice that balanced complex surgical procedures with comprehensive long-term care. Margaret Mitchell's real estate success had been built on her ability to understand both the technical aspects of property transactions and the emotional dynamics that influenced family decisions about housing and investment. Her experience with clients facing major life transitions had taught her to recognize when personal stress might affect decision-making abilities, skills that had served her well in navigating relationships with her son and his family during both prosperous and challenging periods. Kevin's environmental law practice required frequent collaboration with scientists, engineers, and regulatory officials who brought specialized expertise to complex cases involving corporate environmental compliance. His ability to synthesize technical information and present it clearly to judges and juries had earned recognition from professional associations and generated referrals from colleagues who valued his analytical skills and communication abilities. Amanda's family law cases often involved situations where medical issues intersected with domestic relations, creating legal challenges that required understanding of both healthcare systems and family dynamics. Her experience with cases involving disabled individuals or families facing medical crises had taught her to recognize how illness could exacerbate existing relationship tensions or create new opportunities for controlling or manipulative behavior. Lisa Thompson's marketing background included specialized training in social media strategies and digital communications that had proved valuable in developing promotional campaigns for professional service businesses seeking to expand their client base. Her work with David's insurance agency had focused on creating marketing materials that projected competence and trustworthiness, while differentiating his services from larger competitors who relied primarily on price competition rather than personalized service. The nursing staff at Riverside General included professionals with diverse backgrounds and specializations, creating a collaborative environment where different perspectives and expertise enhanced patient care outcomes. Emily's psychology coursework had been particularly valuable in recognizing when patients might be experiencing anxiety or depression that could affect their recovery process. While her communication skills helped create comfortable environments for difficult conversations with patients and family members, David's business philosophy emphasized building long-term relationships with clients who valued comprehensive service and personal attention over the lowest possible premium costs. His success had been built on his ability to explain complex insurance products in terms that non-professionals could understand, while identifying coverage gaps that might create financial vulnerabilities during major life events such as illness, disability, or property damage. The hospital's administrative structure included department heads who maintained oversight of different aspects of patient care, from medical treatment to social services to security and facilities management. This collaborative approach ensured that patient needs were addressed comprehensively while maintaining the specialized expertise required for different aspects of hospital operations and patient advocacy. Margaret's involvement in David's business development had extended beyond introductions to potential clients to include advice about financial planning and investment strategies that had helped him build the reserves necessary to expand his agency and weather economic uncertainties that affected many small businesses during challenging economic periods. Her practical wisdom about money management had influenced David's approach to both personal and professional financial planning. Emily's night shift responsibilities included monitoring patients who required different levels of care, from post-surgical recovery to chronic condition management to end-of-life support for individuals and families facing terminal diagnoses. Her training had emphasized the importance of recognizing when situations required additional resources or specialized intervention that might not be apparent through routine monitoring protocol. Detective Rodriguez's domestic violence specialization had required training in trauma-informed interviewing techniques and understanding of the psychological dynamics that often prevented victims from immediately reporting abuse or seeking help. Her experience had taught her to recognize subtle indicators of controlling behavior and to understand how perpetrators often exploited medical crises or other vulnerabilities to escalate their control over victims. The medical records system at Riverside General maintained comprehensive documentation of every aspect of patient care, creating permanent records that could be accessed by authorized personnel and reviewed for quality control purposes or legal proceedings. The system's security protocols ensured that patient privacy was protected while providing transparency for medical decision-making and accountability for professional standards. Dr. Hayes's surgical schedule typically included 2 to 3 major procedures each week, with the remaining time dedicated to follow-up care, consultation with referring physicians, and collaboration with other specialists when patients required coordinated treatment plans. His approach to surgery emphasized thorough preoperative preparation and comprehensive postoperative monitoring that continued until patients achieved full recovery or stable long-term management of their cardiac conditions. Kevin's analytical skills had been developed through years of reviewing complex environmental data and regulatory documents that required attention to detail and ability to identify patterns that might not be immediately apparent to investigators without specialized training. His experience with corporate cover-ups had taught him to recognize when seemingly innocent actions might be part of larger schemes designed to avoid legal responsibility or regulatory oversight. Amanda's understanding of family dynamics had been enhanced through continuing education courses that focused on the intersection of domestic violence and other life stressors, including medical crises that could create additional vulnerabilities for individuals already experiencing controlling or abusive relationships. Her training had emphasized the importance of maintaining awareness of these dynamics even when they weren't the primary focus of legal proceedings. The hospital's security department maintained responsibility for both external threats and internal incidents that might affect patient safety or staff security. Officers conducted regular rounds throughout the facility, monitored surveillance systems, and responded to incidents ranging from medical emergencies to family disputes that might require intervention to maintain appropriate hospital environments for patient care and recovery. Lisa's professional background included experience with crisis communications and reputation management for businesses facing challenging situations, skills that had proved valuable in developing marketing strategies that projected stability and competence even during periods of economic uncertainty or competitive pressure. Her work emphasized authentic messaging that built long-term trust rather than short-term promotional impact. The cardiac rehabilitation program at Riverside General employed specialists in exercise physiology, nutrition, and psychological counseling who collaborated to develop comprehensive recovery plans that addressed not only medical requirements but also lifestyle changes that could improve long-term outcomes for heart surgery patients. The program's success had been documented through outcome studies that demonstrated improved recovery rates and reduced complications for participants. Emily's documentation practices had been recognized by supervisors who valued her ability to capture both objective medical observations and subjective patient reports that provided comprehensive pictures of recovery progress and potential concerns. Her notes often included details about family dynamics and patient emotional states that proved valuable for other healthcare professionals involved in treatment planning and discharge preparation. Margaret's understanding of financial planning had been developed through decades of real estate transactions that required analysis of tax implications, investment potential, and long-term financial planning for clients making major decisions about property acquisition and disposition. Her expertise had been valuable to David as he built his insurance business and developed strategies for long-term growth and financial stability. The hospital's quality assurance program included regular reviews of patient care outcomes, staff performance, and system effectiveness that ensured compliance with regulatory requirements and professional standards. These reviews often identified opportunities for improvement in protocols, training, or resource allocation that could enhance patient care outcomes and staff effectiveness. Dr. Hayes's commitment to patient education included development of informational materials that explained cardiac conditions and treatment options in language that non-medical professionals could understand, helping patients and families make informed decisions about treatment alternatives and recovery planning. His approach emphasized collaborative decision-making that respected patient preferences while ensuring adherence to medical best practices. Detective Rodriguez's investigative experience had taught her to maintain detailed documentation of all aspects of cases, from initial reports through final disposition, creating comprehensive records that could withstand legal scrutiny and provide thorough accounting of investigative processes and findings. Her attention to detail had been crucial in developing cases that resulted in successful prosecutions of individuals who exploited vulnerable victims. Kevin's litigation experience had included cases where technical evidence needed to be presented clearly to judges and juries who lacked specialized knowledge about environmental science or regulatory compliance, requiring communication skills that translated complex information into accessible formats without losing accuracy or important nuances that could affect legal outcomes. Part 4. The Catalyst Event. The night of October 15th began like any other during my recovery, with Emily completing her evening rounds and checking the programming on my medication dispenser to ensure that overnight doses would be administered according to Dr. Hayes's carefully calibrated schedule. My vital signs had been stable throughout the day, prompting optimistic comments from the afternoon nursing staff about my progress toward potential discharge planning that might begin the following week. David had visited during regular hours, bringing dinner from my favorite restaurant and stimulating it when visiting hours ended for family members without overnight privileges. His conversation had been cheerful and supportive, focusing on positive developments in his business and updates about our home in Maple Heights, where he was managing household responsibilities during my absence. Nothing in his demeanor suggested the dramatic events that would unfold just hours later. Emily had noticed that David seemed particularly interested in the medical equipment surrounding my bed that evening, asking detailed questions about the heart monitor's alarm systems and the medication dispenser's programming schedule. While family members often express curiosity about medical devices, his questions had struck her as unusually technical and specific, prompting her to make notes in my file about his apparent interest in the timing and function of critical monitoring equipment. The cardiac wing maintained quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., during which only essential medical activities were permitted in patient rooms, and hallway lighting was dimmed to promote rest for recovering patients. Security rounds occurred hourly, but guards focused primarily on external access points rather than monitoring authorized family members who possessed visitor badges that allowed access to patient areas during designated hours. At approximately 11:30 p.m., Emily had been updating patient charts at the nursing station when she noticed David's figure moving through the dimly lit hallway toward my room, though visiting hours had ended more than 3 hours earlier. His presence wasn't necessarily alarming, as family members sometimes returned during overnight hours if patients experienced distress or medical complications that required family consultation or emotional support. The keycard access system that controlled entry to patient rooms maintained electronic logs of all entries and exits, recording not only the time and identity of individuals accessing restricted areas, but also the duration of their presence in patient rooms. This system had been installed as part of recent security upgrades designed to protect vulnerable patients while maintaining appropriate access for authorized medical staff and family members. David's movements in my room had been captured by hallway security cameras that recorded continuously during overnight hours. Though the cameras weren't positioned to monitor activities inside patient rooms due to privacy consideration, the footage showed him entering my room at 11:47 p.m. and remaining inside for approximately 23 minutes, an unusually long duration for a brief check on a sleeping patient's condition. My heart monitor's alarm system had been programmed to alert the nursing station if my heart rate dropped below 50 beats per minute or exceeded 120 beats per minute, parameters that Dr. Hayes had established based on my specific cardiac condition and recovery requirements. The system also monitored the electrical patterns of my heart rhythm, identifying irregularities that might indicate developing complications requiring immediate medical intervention. The medication dispenser attached to my bed had been programmed with my complete pharmaceutical schedule, including precise timing for blood thinners that required administration every 8 hours to maintain therapeutic levels without creating bleeding risks. Missing even a single dose could potentially result in dangerous blood clots, while excessive doses could cause life-threatening hemorrhaging that might not be immediately apparent to medical staff. Emily's training had emphasized the importance of investigating any unusual circumstances that might affect patient safety, including unexpected visitor behavior or technical problems with medical equipment that could compromise patient care. Her protocols required documentation of any concerns, and immediate notification of supervisory staff when situations fell outside normal parameters for patient monitoring and family involvement. The oxygen concentrator in my room had been calibrated to deliver a specific mixture of gases that supported my cardiovascular recovery without complications that could result from excessive oxygen levels. The device included safety systems that monitored gas mixture and delivery pressure, automatically adjusting output to maintain prescribed levels while alerting medical staff to any technical malfunctions that might affect patient care. At approximately 12:15 a.m., the heart monitor's alarm began sounding at the nursing station, indicating that my heart rate had dropped to dangerous levels that required immediate medical assessment. Emily responded within 30 seconds, finding me unconscious with a heart rate of 38 beats per minute and blood oxygen levels that had dropped precipitously from normal ranges recorded just hours earlier. The medication dispenser's display panel showed that the next scheduled dose of blood thinners had been manually overridden and canceled, though no medical staff had been authorized to make such changes to my pharmaceutical schedule. The device's internal memory maintained records of all programming changes, including user identification and timestamps that documented when modifications had been made to prescribed medication protocols. Emily's immediate response included checking all medical equipment connections and verifying that devices were functioning according to program parameters. A standard protocol when patients experience sudden changes in vital signs that might indicate either medical complications or technical equipment failures. Her assessment revealed that multiple devices had been disconnected from power sources, though backup battery systems had maintained basic functionality. The oxygen concentrator had been turned off manually, though its position near the wall outlet suggested that the disconnection had been deliberate rather than accidental. The device's internal diagnostics showed no mechanical failures or technical problems that might explain why it had stopped delivering prescribed oxygen supplementation critical for my cardiac recovery process. My blood oxygen levels had dropped to 78%, well below the 95% minimum required for safe cardiac recovery and approaching levels that could cause permanent brain damage if not corrected immediately. Emily's training recognized this as a life-threatening emergency, requiring immediate intervention and activation of emergency response protocols. The heart monitor's data logs showed that my heart rate had begun declining gradually around midnight, consistent with insufficient oxygen delivery that would cause cardiac stress and potentially dangerous arrhythmias. The pattern suggested systematic disruption of my supportive care, rather than sudden medical complications that might occur naturally during recovery from cardiac surgery. Emily's emergency response included immediate reconnection of all medical devices, while calling for additional nursing staff and notification of Dr. Hayes about my sudden deterioration. Her quick actions prevented what could have been fatal complications, though my condition remained critical for several hours while medical staff worked to stabilize my vital signs and restore normal cardiac function. The hospital's emergency response team arrived within 4 minutes of Emily's alert, bringing additional monitoring equipment and pharmaceutical interventions designed to address cardiac emergencies. Their assessment confirmed that my deterioration appeared to result from systematic interruption of prescribed medical support rather than natural complications from my underlying cardiac condition. Security footage from the hallway showed David leaving my room at 12:13 a.m., just 2 minutes before the heart monitor's alarm alerted nursing staff to my crisis. His departure timing, combined with the evidence of deliberate equipment disconnection, created a timeline that suggested a direct relationship between his presence and my sudden medical emergency.
Doctor
Hayes arrived at the hospital within 20 minutes of Emily's emergency call, immediately ordering comprehensive tests to determine the cause of my sudden deterioration, and to assess whether permanent damage had resulted from the period of insufficient oxygen delivery and cardiac stress. His examination revealed no medical reasons for such dramatic changes in my condition. The medication dispenser's override had been accomplished using a manual cancellation code that required specific technical knowledge about the device's programming system, information that wouldn't be available to family members without specialized training in hospital equipment operation. The timestamp showed that the cancellation had occurred at approximately 12:08 a.m., during the period when David was present in my room. Emily's documentation of the evening's events included detailed notes about David's earlier questions regarding medical equipment, the unusual duration of his unauthorized visit, and the systematic nature of the equipment disconnections that had precipitated my medical crisis. Her thorough record-keeping would prove crucial for subsequent investigations into the circumstances surrounding my near-fatal emergency. The hospital's administration was notified immediately about the apparent security breach and potential patient safety incident, triggering protocols for investigation of suspicious circumstances and coordination with law enforcement, when medical emergencies might result from criminal activity, rather than natural medical complications or accidental equipment failures. Margaret received a phone call at 12:45 a.m., informing her about my emergency and requesting her immediate presence at the hospital, though the caller didn't provide details about the circumstances that had precipitated my sudden deterioration. She arrived within 30 minutes, her distress evident, as she sought information about my condition and prognosis for recovery from what appeared to be unexpected complications. Kevin and Amanda were contacted at 1:15 a.m., with urgent requests to come to the hospital immediately due to my critical condition, though they weren't initially informed about the suspicious circumstances surrounding my medical emergency. Their arrival 40 minutes later marked the beginning of family involvement in what would soon become a criminal investigation rather than simply a medical crisis. Part 5, Hidden Strengths Revealed.
The intensive care unit, where I was transferred following my emergency stabilization, included advanced monitoring systems that recorded not only my vital signs but also environmental factors that might affect recovery from the trauma my cardiovascular system had experienced during the hours when my prescribed medical support had been systematically disconnected. Hayes had ordered comprehensive neurological testing to assess whether oxygen deprivation had caused any permanent damage to my brain function or cognitive abilities. Emily's shift report to the day nursing supervisor included detailed documentation of the unusual circumstances surrounding my medical crisis, particularly the technical knowledge that would have been required to override the medication dispenser and the deliberate nature of the equipment disconnections that had precipitated my emergency. Her training in patient advocacy had taught her to recognize, when situations extended beyond routine medical
complications and might require additional investigation or protective measures. Detective Rodriguez received notification about my case at 6 a.m. when hospital administration contacted police about potential criminal activity that might have contributed to a patient's life-threatening medical emergency. Her initial response included securing the medical equipment for forensic analysis and beginning preliminary interviews with hospital staff who had witnessed events during the critical overnight period. The hospital's legal department had been activated immediately following my emergency, recognizing that potential criminal activity on hospital premises created liability concerns that extended beyond routine medical malpractice considerations. Their involvement included coordination with law enforcement and documentation of hospital security protocols that might be relevant to any subsequent legal proceedings. My phone, which had been charging on the bedside table throughout the night, contained an audio recording application that I had activated weeks earlier to help me remember medical instructions and important conversations during the disorientation that sometimes accompanied strong pain medications. The application had been running continuously, capturing conversations and ambient sounds that provided detailed documentation of David's activities in my room during the critical period. The audio recording revealed David's voice speaking quietly on his phone around midnight, discussing timeline acceleration and insurance implications with an unidentified caller whose responses weren't clearly audible but whose presence suggested coordination with another individual about events related to my medical crisis. The recording quality was sufficient to document David's side of the conversation, including references to complications that might expedite the process. Kevin's arrival at the hospital had been delayed by his decision to stop at his office and retrieve recording equipment that he routinely used for client interviews in complex environmental cases. His experience with corporate investigations had taught him the importance of preserving evidence before it could be altered or destroyed, particularly when initial circumstances suggested possible criminal activity rather than accidental events. Amanda's legal training had included coursework in criminal procedure and evidence preservation, knowledge that proved valuable when she recognized the potential legal implications of my medical emergency and the suspicious circumstances that Emily had documented in her nursing notes. Her immediate focus shifted from family support to ensuring that evidence was properly preserved for potential criminal prosecution. The hospital's surveillance system included not only hallway cameras but also access control logs that documented keycard usage throughout the facility, creating comprehensive records of movement patterns that could be analyzed to establish timelines for potential criminal activity. The system's 30-day archive period provided adequate time for law enforcement to preserve evidence before automatic deletion occurred. Dr. Hayes's examination of my medical records revealed patterns that suggested my recovery had been progressing normally until the sudden deterioration that occurred during David's unauthorized visit. His analysis indicated that my cardiac function had been improving steadily, making the dramatic overnight crisis inconsistent with natural complications that might occur during routine post-surgical recovery. The medication dispenser's internal memory contained detailed logs of all programming changes, including user identification codes and timestamps that documented exactly when my blood thinner schedule had been overridden and canceled. The forensic analysis revealed that the cancellation had been accomplished using an administrative override code that shouldn't have been available to unauthorized individuals. Emily's psychology background had included training in recognizing signs of domestic violence and understanding how medical crises could be exploited by abusive partners seeking to gain control or eliminate victims who might threaten their interests. Her observations about David's behavior patterns and technical questions had been informed by this specialized knowledge about intimate partner violence dynamics. The hospital's patient advocacy program included resources for individuals who might be experiencing domestic violence or family coercion during medical crises. Recognizing that vulnerable patients could be at increased risk for abuse when illness created dependency on family members for emotional and practical support. These resources remained available even when patients hadn't explicitly requested protection or assistance. Margaret's phone records, which she voluntarily provided to Detective Rodriguez, revealed that she had received several calls from David during the week preceding my medical emergency. Conversations that included discussions about insurance policies and financial planning that might be relevant to understanding his motivations for potentially harming me. Her cooperation with the investigation reflected her commitment to discovering the truth about her son's involvement. The insurance policies that David had purchased during our marriage included substantial life insurance coverage that would provide him with significant financial benefits if I died from complications related to my cardiac surgery. The policies had been increased substantially 6 months earlier, around the time that his relationship with Lisa Thompson had reportedly begun developing beyond professional collaboration. Kevin's environmental law experience had included cases where individuals attempted to conceal criminal activity by creating plausible alternative explanations for suspicious events. Knowledge that proved valuable in analyzing the evidence surrounding my medical emergency and identifying patterns that suggested deliberate rather than accidental causation of my life-threatening crisis. Amanda's understanding of family violence dynamics had been enhanced through specialized training that emphasized how perpetrators often escalated controlling behavior during periods when victims were most vulnerable, including medical crises that created opportunities for abuse while providing cover stories that might deflect suspicion from law enforcement or healthcare professionals. The forensic analysis of my medical equipment revealed fingerprints on device controls and power connections that matched David's prints, which were on file from a background check required for his insurance license. The placement and pattern of the prints suggested deliberate manipulation of equipment settings rather than accidental contact that might occur during normal family visits to patient rooms. Detective Rodriguez's investigation expanded to include financial records that might reveal David's motivations for potentially attempting to harm me, including insurance policies, business debts, and personal expenses that might create financial pressure requiring resolution through my death rather than through legitimate business or legal channels. Emily's documentation practices had been recognized by hospital supervisors as exemplary examples of comprehensive patient advocacy, skills that proved crucial for preserving evidence and establishing the timeline of events that led to my medical emergency. Her attention to detail had created records that could withstand legal scrutiny and provide thorough documentation of suspicious circumstances. The hospital's administration implemented additional security measures for my ongoing care, including restricted visitor access and enhanced monitoring protocols designed to prevent any further attempts to compromise my medical treatment. These protective measures reflected recognition that my emergency had likely resulted from criminal activity rather than medical complications or equipment failures. Dr. Hayes's assessment of my prognosis indicated that while I had survived the immediate crisis without permanent damage, the systematic disruption of my medical care had created additional stress on my cardiovascular system that would require extended monitoring and potentially additional medical interventions to ensure complete recovery. His recommendation included maintaining intensive care protocols until my condition stabilized completely and all risk factors had been eliminated. The digital forensics analysis of hospital computer systems revealed that someone had accessed my medical records using David's visitor credentials during the hour preceding my medical emergency, reviewing information about my medication schedule and monitoring equipment that wouldn't typically be of interest to family members providing emotional support during recovery periods. The access logs provided additional evidence of premeditation rather than spontaneous criminal behavior. Margaret's cooperation with the investigation included providing Detective Rodriguez with information about David's recent behavior changes, including increased secrecy about his business activities and unusual interest in insurance policy details that had previously held little interest for him. Her observations painted a picture of escalating stress and behavioral changes that aligned with the timeline of his developing relationship with Lisa Thompson. The hospital's legal team had begun coordinating with law enforcement to ensure that all evidence was properly preserved and that my ongoing medical care wasn't compromised by the criminal investigation. Their involvement included establishing protocols for maintaining patient confidentiality while cooperating with legitimate law enforcement needs for information and evidence preservation. Amanda's family law experience had included cases where financial motivations drove domestic violence escalation, particularly situations where perpetrators face significant financial pressures that might be resolved through victim elimination rather than through legitimate legal or business solutions. Her analysis of David's potential motivations focused on insurance benefits and business assets that might provide financial incentives for criminal behavior. The audio recording from my phone captured not only David's suspicious phone conversation but also sounds of medical equipment being manipulated, including the distinctive electronic tones that accompanied programming changes to the medication dispenser and the mechanical sounds of devices being disconnected from power sources. The recording provided compelling evidence of deliberate rather than accidental equipment failures. Kevin's decision to involve his law firm's private investigation resources reflected his recognition that the hospital's internal investigation might not have the specialized expertise required to uncover all aspects of potential criminal activity, particularly if David had been planning his actions for an extended period and had taken steps to conceal evidence or create alternative explanations for suspicious circumstances. Detective Rodriguez's background check on David revealed no previous criminal history or documented patterns of violent behavior, though her experience with domestic violence cases had taught her that many perpetrators maintained public facades of respectability while engaging in escalating controlling behavior within intimate relationships. The absence of previous incidents didn't eliminate the possibility of criminal intent in my medical emergency. The hospital's patient safety committee had been convened immediately following my emergency to review security protocols and identify potential improvements that might prevent similar incidents in the future. Their preliminary assessment focused on visitor access controls and medical equipment security measures that could be enhanced without compromising legitimate family involvement in patient care. Emily's nursing supervisor had praised her quick recognition of suspicious circumstances and immediate response to my medical crisis, actions that likely prevented fatal complications and preserved crucial evidence for the criminal investigation. Her training in patient advocacy and attention to behavioral details had been instrumental in identifying criminal activity that might otherwise have been attributed to medical complications. The forensic accounting analysis of David's business and personal finances revealed significant debts and cash flow problems that had developed during the 6 months preceding my medical emergency, creating financial pressures that might motivate desperate actions, including insurance fraud through victim elimination. The timing of these financial difficulties aligned with his escalating relationship with Lisa Thompson and increased life insurance coverage. Margaret's real estate expertise had included experience with insurance fraud cases where individuals attempted to resolve financial difficulties through property damage or personal injury claims, knowledge that proved valuable in understanding the potential financial motivations behind David's apparent attempt to harm me. Her cooperation with the investigation reflected her commitment to justice despite the personal pain of discovering her son's criminal behavior. The hospital's social work department had activated additional resources for my ongoing emotional support and family counseling services that might be needed as the criminal investigation progressed and family relationships were affected by the revelation of David's criminal intent. These services included trauma counseling and legal advocacy that extended beyond immediate medical needs. Dr. Hayes had consulted with colleagues who specialized in cases where patients had been victims of attempted murder through medical sabotage, seeking expertise about potential long-term health effects and appropriate monitoring protocols for individuals who had survived systematic disruption of prescribed medical care. His approach emphasized both immediate recovery needs and prevention of future criminal attempts. The digital evidence from hospital security systems included not only visual recordings and access logs but also electronic communications that had been transmitted through the hospital's wireless network during the critical period, potentially including David's phone conversations and text messages that might provide additional evidence of premeditation and coordination with accomplices. Kevin's environmental law background had included collaboration with forensic accountants and digital forensics experts who specialized in uncovering complex schemes designed to conceal criminal activity, expertise that proved valuable in analyzing the evidence surrounding my medical emergency and identifying patterns that suggested systematic planning rather than spontaneous criminal behavior. Amanda's understanding of domestic violence prosecution had included training in evidence preservation and victim advocacy that ensured criminal cases could proceed successfully despite the emotional trauma and family disruption that often accompanied intimate partner violence investigations. Her involvement helped coordinate legal and emotional support resources that addressed both immediate safety needs and long-term recovery planning. The hospital's administration had implemented immediate policy changes regarding visitor access during overnight hours and medical equipment security protocols designed to prevent unauthorized interference with patient care devices. These changes reflected lessons learned from my case while maintaining appropriate family involvement in patient support and decision-making during medical crises. Detective Rodriguez's investigation had expanded to include Lisa Thompson as a potential accomplice or co-conspirator. Recognizing that intimate relationships often involved shared knowledge of criminal plans and that financial benefits from insurance policies might extend beyond the primary perpetrator to include romantic partners who expected to benefit from victim elimination schemes. The forensic psychology consultation that Detective Rodriguez had requested focused on analyzing David's behavioral patterns and motivations to understand whether my medical emergency represented an isolated incident or part of a broader pattern of controlling and potentially violent behavior that might have included previous unreported incidents or plans for future criminal activity. Emily's continuing education in domestic violence recognition had included specialized training in identifying cases where medical settings were exploited for criminal purposes. Knowledge that had been crucial in recognizing the suspicious circumstances surrounding my emergency and ensuring that appropriate protective measures were implemented to prevent additional criminal attempts. The hospital's quality assurance review of my case had identified several systemic vulnerabilities that could be exploited by individuals seeking to harm patients through medical equipment sabotage, leading to comprehensive security improvements that would protect future patients while maintaining the supportive family involvement that contributed positively to recovery outcomes. Margaret's decision to hire independent legal representation reflected her recognition that her son's criminal behavior might create legal liabilities for family members who had been unaware of his intentions but might be perceived as having contributed to or enabled his criminal planning through financial support or emotional encouragement of his relationship with Lisa Thompson. The insurance investigation that had been triggered by David's attempt to file claims related to my medical emergency revealed patterns of questionable claims and policy modifications that suggested a broader pattern of insurance fraud that extended beyond the attempted murder and might include previous incidents where he had manipulated circumstances to generate insurance payouts. Dr. Hayes's consultation with medical ethics specialists had focused on developing appropriate protocols for treating patients who had been victims of attempted murder through medical sabotage, ensuring that their ongoing care addressed both physical recovery needs and psychological trauma while maintaining professional obligations to provide comprehensive medical support regardless of family relationship complications. The hospital's legal department had begun coordinating with prosecutors to ensure that medical records and evidence were properly formatted and documented for criminal proceedings while maintaining patient privacy protections and ensuring that my ongoing medical care wasn't disrupted by legal proceedings or media attention that might affect my recovery environment. Kevin's law firm had activated their crisis management resources to coordinate family communications and media relations that might become necessary as the criminal investigation progressed and David's arrest became public knowledge, potentially affecting the family's reputation and business relationships within Riverside's close-knit professional community. Amanda's family law expertise had been applied to analyzing the potential civil liability implications of David's criminal behavior, including asset protection strategies that might preserve financial resources for my ongoing medical care and long-term recovery needs while ensuring that David's criminal actions didn't compromise legitimate family financial security. The digital forensics analysis had revealed that David had been researching medical equipment operation and cardiac recovery protocols through internet searches conducted from his office computer during the weeks preceding my medical emergency, providing additional evidence of premeditation and systematic planning rather than spontaneous criminal behavior motivated by sudden emotional distress. Detective Rodriguez's coordination with federal authorities had been prompted by the interstate insurance implications of David's apparent fraud scheme and the potential involvement of Lisa Thompson, whose residence in a neighboring state might create jurisdictional complications requiring federal coordination to ensure comprehensive investigation and prosecution of all criminal activity. The hospital's patient advocacy program had assigned a dedicated advocate to coordinate my ongoing care and ensure that my rights and needs were protected throughout the criminal investigation process, including assistance with legal proceedings and coordination with law enforcement agencies that might require medical information or testimony related to the attempted murder case.
Emily's documentation of David's earlier visits and behavior patterns had provided investigators with a comprehensive timeline of suspicious activities that extended beyond the night of my medical emergency, revealing a pattern of gradually escalating interest in my medical equipment and recovery protocols that suggested systematic preparation for criminal activity. The forensic financial analysis had uncovered evidence that David had been liquidating business assets and personal investments during the month preceding my medical emergency, actions that suggested he had been preparing for significant life changes that might require immediate access to cash resources, possibly including plans to flee the jurisdiction following successful completion of his criminal scheme. Margaret's cooperation with investigators had included providing access to family financial records and communications that revealed David's increasing secrecy about his personal relationships and business activities. Behavioral changes that she had attributed to work stress but now recognized as potential indicators of criminal planning and preparation for eliminating perceived threats to his freedom and financial security. The hospital's security department had implemented enhanced monitoring protocols for my ongoing care, including background checks for all personnel with access to my room and continuous surveillance measures designed to prevent any additional criminal attempts while maintaining appropriate privacy and dignity during my recovery process. Dr. Hayes's analysis of my medical records had identified several previous incidents during my hospitalization where minor equipment malfunctions or medication timing issues had occurred. Events that had been attributed to routine technical problems but now appeared potentially consistent with practice attempts or preliminary criminal activity designed to test security measures and staff response protocols. The audio recording evidence had been enhanced through digital analysis that revealed additional details about David's phone conversation, including background sounds that suggested he had been coordinating with someone present in the hospital building during his criminal activity, potentially indicating the involvement of accomplices who had provided assistance or surveillance during the attempted murder. Kevin's investigation resources had uncovered evidence that David had been consulting with individuals who possessed technical knowledge about medical equipment operation, consultations that he had characterized as research for insurance claims processing but which now appeared potentially related to planning criminal activity requiring specialized knowledge about cardiac monitoring and life support systems. Amanda's analysis of domestic violence patterns had identified David's behavior as consistent with escalating controlling behavior that often preceded intimate partner violence, including the systematic isolation of victims from support systems and the exploitation of medical vulnerabilities to create opportunities for abuse or elimination of perceived threats to perpetrator control. The hospital's administration had coordinated with law enforcement to ensure that my medical care continued without interruption while preserving all evidence related to the criminal investigation, including maintaining the integrity of medical equipment that had been sabotaged and preserving electronic records that documented the timeline and methods of David's criminal activity. Detective Rodriguez's interview with Lisa Thompson had revealed that David had discussed insurance benefits and financial planning with her during their relationship, conversations that suggested she had been aware of his financial motivations for criminal behavior even if she hadn't been directly involved in planning or executing the attempted murder through medical equipment sabotage. The forensic analysis of hospital surveillance footage had been expanded to include examination of previous visits by David during my hospitalization, revealing patterns of behavior that suggested he had been studying security protocols and staff schedules in preparation for criminal activity, including identification of periods when monitoring would be minimal and response times would be delayed. Emily's nursing expertise had been recognized by law enforcement as crucial for understanding the medical implications of David's criminal activity and the likelihood that his actions would have resulted in my death if not for her quick recognition of suspicious circumstances and immediate response to the life-threatening emergency he had created through systematic sabotage of my prescribed medical care. The hospital's legal team had begun developing protocols for handling similar cases in the future, recognizing that medical facilities could be vulnerable to criminal exploitation by individuals seeking to harm patients through equipment sabotage or medication interference, particularly when perpetrators possessed legitimate visitor access and basic knowledge about medical procedures and monitoring systems. Margaret's emotional trauma from discovering her son's criminal behavior had required professional counseling support that addressed both her guilt about potentially missing warning signs and her commitment to supporting justice for my victimization. Despite the personal cost of seeing her son prosecuted for attempted murder and insurance fraud related to his systematic planning and execution of criminal activity, The insurance fraud investigation had revealed that David had been planning similar schemes involving other clients of his agency, suggesting a broader pattern of criminal behavior that extended beyond attempted murder to include systematic exploitation of insurance policies and medical emergencies to generate fraudulent claims and financial benefits through deliberate creation of catastrophic situations. Dr. Hayes' ongoing monitoring of my recovery had included assessment of psychological trauma from the attempted murder, recognizing that victims of intimate partner violence often experienced complex emotional responses that could affect physical healing and long-term recovery outcomes, requiring comprehensive treatment approaches that addressed both medical and psychological aspects of recovery from criminal victimization. The digital evidence preservation process had included analysis of David's electronic communications and internet activity during the months preceding my medical emergency, revealing extensive research into cardiac conditions, recovery protocols, and insurance claim procedures that provided compelling evidence of systematic criminal planning rather than spontaneous violent behavior. Motivated by immediate emotional factors, Kevin's
coordination with prosecutors had focused on ensuring that all evidence was properly documented and preserved for trial proceedings, while protecting my privacy and medical information from unnecessary disclosure, balancing the requirements of criminal prosecution with legitimate patient rights and family privacy concerns during the investigation and legal proceedings. Amanda's legal analysis had identified potential civil remedies that might provide financial compensation for my medical expenses and emotional trauma, while ensuring that David's criminal behavior didn't compromise legitimate family assets that should be preserved for other family members who hadn't been involved in or aware of his criminal planning and attempted murder through medical equipment sabotage. The hospital's patient safety improvements implemented following my case had been recognized by regulatory authorities as model protocols for preventing criminal exploitation of medical facilities while maintaining appropriate family involvement in patient care and support, demonstrating that security enhancements could be achieved without compromising the therapeutic benefits of family participation in recovery processes. The district attorney's office had assembled a prosecution team that specialized in complex domestic violence cases involving attempted murder, recognizing that David's systematic planning and execution of his criminal scheme required expertise in both medical evidence and financial fraud prosecution. The lead prosecutor, District Attorney Catherine Walsh, had built her career on high-profile cases where intimate partner violence had escalated to life-threatening criminal behavior that required comprehensive legal responses addressing both immediate safety concerns and long-term justice for victims. David's arrest had occurred at his insurance office on Oak Street, where Detective Rodriguez and her team had coordinated with federal agents to ensure that all potential evidence was preserved before he could destroy documents or electronic records that might be relevant to the broader insurance fraud investigation. His shock at being confronted with the overwhelming evidence of his criminal activity had been evident to witnesses, though he had immediately requested legal representation and refused to provide any statements about his motivations or planning process. The bail hearing had attracted significant media attention due to the unusual nature of the attempted murder method and the professional standing that David had maintained within Riverside's business community prior to his criminal behavior being exposed. Judge Patricia Morrison had denied bail based on the severity of the charges and the systematic nature of the criminal planning that suggested high risk for flight or additional criminal activity if David remained free during the legal proceedings. Lisa Thompson's cooperation with investigators had revealed extensive communications with David about insurance policies and financial planning that provided crucial evidence of his premeditation and financial motivations for attempting to murder me through medical equipment sabotage. Her testimony would be essential for establishing the timeline of criminal planning and David's state of mind during the months when he had been systematically preparing to eliminate me while maintaining his facade of devoted husband during my medical crisis. The forensic medical testimony that Dr. Hayes would provide during trial proceedings focused on the life-threatening nature of David's systematic disruption of my prescribed medical care and the high probability that his actions would have resulted in my death if not for Emily's quick recognition of suspicious circumstances and immediate medical intervention. His expert analysis demonstrated that the equipment failures couldn't have occurred accidentally and required specific technical knowledge about cardiac monitoring and life support systems. Emily's testimony would provide detailed documentation of David's suspicious behavior during visits to my hospital room, including his unusual interest in medical equipment operation and the timing of his unauthorized visit during the night when my medical emergency occurred. Her nursing expertise and attention to behavioral details had been crucial for recognizing criminal activity and preserving evidence that would support successful prosecution of David's attempted murder and insurance fraud charges. Margaret's decision to testify against her son reflected her commitment to justice despite the personal anguish of acknowledging David's criminal behavior and its impact on family relationships and her own reputation within Riverside's business community. Her testimony would provide important context about David's financial pressures and behavioral changes that had preceded his criminal activity, helping establish his motivations and state of mind during the planning and execution of his attempted murder scheme. The insurance fraud investigation had expanded to include review of all policies and claims processed through David's agency during the past 5 years, revealing a pattern of questionable activities that suggested his attempted murder of me had been part of a broader criminal enterprise involving systematic exploitation of insurance products for personal financial gain. The scope of the investigation had attracted federal attention due to interstate implications and the potential involvement of multiple insurance companies across different jurisdictions. Kevin's environmental law expertise had been valuable in coordinating the complex evidence preservation and analysis required for prosecuting David's sophisticated criminal scheme, including coordination between medical experts, financial investigators, and law enforcement agencies that needed to work together to present comprehensive evidence of criminal planning and execution. His analytical skills had helped identify patterns of evidence that might not have been apparent to investigators without specialized training in complex regulatory violations. Amanda's family law background had provided crucial support for navigating the emotional and practical challenges of prosecuting intimate partner violence while maintaining family relationships and protecting innocent family members from unnecessary involvement in legal proceedings. Her expertise had been essential for ensuring that my rights and interests were protected throughout the investigation and prosecution process while minimizing additional trauma from legal procedures. The hospital's cooperation with law enforcement had included providing comprehensive medical records and technical expert testimony about the medical equipment that David had sabotaged, ensuring that prosecutors had access to all evidence necessary for establishing the life-threatening nature of his criminal activity and the systematic planning that had been required to execute his attempted murder through medical equipment manipulation during my vulnerable recovery period. Detective Rodriguez's investigation had uncovered evidence that David had been researching methods for causing untraceable deaths through medical equipment failures, including internet searches and library research that demonstrated extensive preparation for criminal activity that extended far beyond spontaneous violent behavior motivated by immediate emotional or financial pressures. The premeditation evidence would be crucial for supporting the most serious criminal charges and ensuring appropriate sentencing if David was convicted. The victim impact statement that I would provide during sentencing proceedings would address not only the immediate trauma of surviving an attempted murder by my husband but also the long-term emotional and physical consequences of his systematic betrayal of trust during my most vulnerable period of medical recovery. The impact extended beyond personal harm to include damage to my ability to trust healthcare systems and family relationships that had been fundamental to my sense of security and well-being. Dr. Hayes's ongoing monitoring of my recovery had required adjustments to my treatment plan that addressed both the additional cardiac stress caused by David's criminal activity and the psychological trauma that could affect my physical healing process. His comprehensive approach recognized that victims of attempted murder often experienced complex medical needs that extended beyond immediate physical injuries to include long-term health effects from traumatic stress and anxiety about personal safety. The plea negotiations that had been initiated by David's defense attorney had been rejected by prosecutors who determined that the severity of his criminal behavior and the systematic nature of his planning warranted prosecution on all charges rather than accepting reduced charges in exchange for guilty pleas. The prosecution team's decision reflected their assessment that David's criminal behavior represented a significant threat to public safety that required maximum legal consequences. Emily's recognition by the State Board of Nursing for her exceptional patient advocacy and professional response to suspicious circumstances had highlighted the importance of comprehensive nursing education that included training in domestic violence recognition and criminal behavior identification. Her example had been incorporated into nursing education programs throughout the state as a model for professional response to complex situations involving patient safety and criminal activity. The hospital's implementation of enhanced security protocols following my case had been adopted by medical facilities throughout the region as a model for preventing criminal exploitation of patient vulnerability while maintaining appropriate family in medical care and recovery processes. The security improvements demonstrated that patient safety could be enhanced without compromising the therapeutic benefits of family support during medical crises. Margaret's establishment of a victim advocacy fund in my name had provided resources for other individuals who had experienced intimate partner violence during medical crises. Recognizing that my case had highlighted a vulnerability that many patients might face when illness created dependency on family members who might exploit that vulnerability for criminal purposes. The fund supported both immediate safety needs and long-term recovery resources for victims of medical-related domestic violence. The insurance industry's response to David's case had included development of enhanced fraud detection protocols specifically designed to identify patterns of behavior that might indicate criminal planning involving policy benefits and deliberate creation of catastrophic situations to generate fraudulent claims. The industry-wide improvements demonstrated recognition that insurance fraud could escalate to violent criminal behavior that threatened policyholder safety as well as financial security. Kevin's law firm had established a pro bono program that provided legal representation for victims of domestic violence who faced complex legal challenges involving medical care, insurance fraud, and criminal prosecution of intimate partners who had exploited medical vulnerabilities for criminal purposes. The program recognized that victims of medical-related intimate partner violence often faced unique legal needs that required specialized expertise and comprehensive support services. Amanda's development of specialized training programs for family law attorneys had focused on recognizing and addressing cases where domestic violence intersected with medical crises, providing legal professionals with tools for identifying and responding to situations where medical vulnerability created opportunities for intimate partner abuse or criminal exploitation. The training programs had been adopted by state bar associations throughout the region. The criminal trial proceedings had attracted national media attention due to the unusual nature of the attempted murder method and the professional standing that David had maintained prior to his criminal behavior being exposed. The case had become a reference point for discussions about intimate partner violence, medical patient safety, and the importance of comprehensive training for healthcare professionals in recognizing criminal behavior that might be disguised as family support. David's conviction on all charges had resulted in a sentence of 25 years to life in prison, reflecting the court's assessment that his systematic planning and execution of attempted murder through medical equipment sabotage represented criminal behavior that warranted maximum legal consequences. The sentence had been upheld on appeal, ensuring that David would remain incarcerated for the majority of his remaining natural life. Lisa Thompson's cooperation with prosecutors had resulted in reduced charges related to her knowledge of David's insurance fraud activities. Though she had been sentenced to 3 years of probation and required to perform community service focused on domestic violence prevention and victim advocacy, her testimony had been crucial for establishing David's criminal planning and financial motivations despite her claims that she hadn't been aware of his intended violence against me. The civil litigation that had followed David's criminal conviction had resulted in substantial financial compensation for my medical expenses, emotional trauma, and long-term care needs, while ensuring that David's criminal behavior didn't compromise legitimate family assets that should be preserved for other family members who hadn't been involved in his criminal planning. The settlement had provided financial security for my ongoing recovery and future medical needs. My physical recovery from David's attempted murder had required additional cardiac procedures to address the stress that his criminal activity had placed on my cardiovascular system, though Dr. Hayes had remained optimistic about my long-term prognosis and ability to return to normal activities once the additional medical interventions had been completed and my emotional trauma had been addressed through comprehensive counseling and support services. The psychological counseling that had been essential for my recovery from the attempted murder had addressed not only the immediate trauma of David's criminal behavior but also the complex process of rebuilding trust in personal relationships and medical systems that had been fundamental to my sense of security and well-being. The therapeutic process had required specialized expertise in treating victims of intimate partner violence who had experienced life-threatening criminal behavior by trusted family members. Emily's continued involvement in my care during the extended recovery period had provided crucial emotional support and professional advocacy that had been essential for navigating the complex medical and legal challenges that had followed David's attempted murder. Her dedication to patient advocacy had ensured that my medical needs remained the priority throughout the investigation and prosecution process despite the significant attention and disruption caused by the criminal proceedings. The hospital's establishment of a patient safety foundation in recognition of my case had provided resources for improving medical facility security and training healthcare professionals to recognize and respond to criminal activity that might threaten patient safety during vulnerable recovery periods. The Foundation's work had contributed to enhanced safety protocols at medical facilities throughout the country, protecting future patients from similar criminal exploitation. Margaret's ongoing involvement in victim advocacy work had reflected her commitment to preventing other families from experiencing the trauma and devastation that had resulted from David's criminal behavior. Despite the personal cost of acknowledging her son's actions and their impact on family relationships and community standing, her advocacy work had focused on education about domestic violence warning signs and support for victims of intimate partner violence during medical crises. The legislative changes that had been prompted by my case had included enhanced penalties for crimes committed against vulnerable individuals during medical crises and improved training requirements for healthcare professionals in recognizing and responding to domestic violence that might be disguised as family support during patient recovery periods. The legal reforms had been adopted in multiple states as model legislation for protecting patients from criminal exploitation during medical vulnerability. Kevin's continued legal representation had ensured that my interests were protected throughout the extended legal proceedings and civil litigation that had followed David's criminal conviction, while his environmental law expertise had been valuable for analyzing the complex evidence and coordination requirements that had been necessary for successful prosecution of David's sophisticated criminal scheme. His analytical skills had contributed to the comprehensive legal response that had achieved justice for David's criminal behavior. Amanda's ongoing support had been essential for navigating the complex family dynamics and legal challenges that had resulted from prosecuting intimate partner violence while maintaining relationships with innocent family members who had also been traumatized by David's criminal behavior. Her family law expertise had been crucial for ensuring that legal proceedings addressed both justice and healing for all affected family members. Dr. Hayes's long-term monitoring of my recovery had included regular assessments of both physical healing and psychological adjustment to ensure that my medical care addressed all aspects of recovery from the attempted murder and its impact on my cardiovascular health and overall well-being. His comprehensive approach had been essential for achieving optimal recovery outcomes despite the additional trauma and medical complications caused by David's criminal activity. The victim advocacy resources that had been developed following my case had provided support for other individuals who had experienced intimate partner violence during medical crises, recognizing that medical vulnerability created unique opportunities for criminal exploitation that required specialized response and support services. The advocacy programs had been adopted by hospitals and victim service organizations throughout the region as model approaches to supporting victims of medical-related domestic violence. My return to normal activities had been gradual but successful, with ongoing medical monitoring ensuring that the additional stress placed on my cardiovascular system by David's attempted murder didn't create long-term health complications that might affect my quality of life or require additional medical intervention. The recovery process had been supported by comprehensive medical care and psychological counseling that had addressed both physical and emotional healing needs. The professional recognition that Emily had received for her exceptional patient advocacy and life-saving response to David's criminal activity had included awards from nursing organizations and invitations to speak at medical conferences about the importance of comprehensive patient advocacy training that included domestic violence recognition and criminal behavior identification. Her example had influenced nursing education programs throughout the country. The broader impact of my case on healthcare policy and domestic violence prevention had included development of enhanced training programs for medical professionals, improved security protocols for patient safety, and increased awareness of the intersection between intimate partner violence and medical vulnerability that could create opportunities for criminal exploitation of patients during recovery periods. The policy changes had contributed to improved safety and advocacy for vulnerable patients in medical settings. The insurance industry reforms that had been implemented following David's case had included enhanced fraud detection protocols and improved training for insurance professionals in recognizing patterns of behavior that might indicate criminal planning involving policy benefits and deliberate creation of catastrophic situations for fraudulent financial gain.
The industry-wide improvements had contributed to enhanced protection for policyholders and reduced opportunities for criminal exploitation of insurance products. My ongoing involvement in victim advocacy and domestic violence prevention had reflected my commitment to using my experience to protect other individuals from similar criminal exploitation and to support comprehensive legal and medical responses to intimate partner violence that escalated to life-threatening criminal behavior. The advocacy work had provided meaningful purpose during my recovery process while contributing to improved safety and support resources for other victims. The lasting impact of David's attempted murder had extended beyond personal trauma to include positive changes in healthcare, domestic violence prevention, and victim advocacy that had improved safety and support resources for vulnerable individuals facing similar threats from intimate partners who might exploit medical crises for criminal purposes. The comprehensive legal, medical, and social response to my case had demonstrated the importance of coordinated efforts to protect victims and prevent similar criminal behavior through enhanced awareness training and support systems. The resolution of criminal and civil legal proceedings had provided justice for David's attempted murder while ensuring that appropriate financial resources were available for my ongoing medical care and recovery needs, demonstrating that comprehensive legal responses to intimate partner violence could address both punishment for criminal behavior and support for victim recovery and long-term well-being. The legal outcomes had provided a foundation for rebuilding my life while contributing to broader improvements in victim protection and support services. My recovery had ultimately demonstrated the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of comprehensive support systems that could recognize and respond to criminal threats while providing the medical care, emotional support, and legal advocacy necessary for healing and justice. The experience had transformed my understanding of personal strength and the importance of community support in overcoming even the most devastating betrayals and criminal attacks by those who should have provided protection and care during vulnerability and medical crisis. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.